I have always been grateful for the opportunities to travel which the church has given me. I've been to many places and met many people I would otherwise not have seen or encountered. Some may think these trips are junkets. Unsurprisingly, I don't. And I remember that the church has always had this element of movement about it. It's always been about going different places and encountering different people and sharing faith with them. Before it was an organization, before it was an institution, it was a movement. And maybe should be once again. All the first disciples were travelers. I think that the prize must go to Thomas, who supposedly got as far as India, where his life is particularly celebrated among some Christian communities. Others traveled in Egypt, in the Levant, in Asia Minor, and around the Mediterranean. But the most famous traveler of them all, the one that we certainly know most about, is Paul, whose missionary journeys are described in the Acts of the Apostles. Our reading from Acts this morning reminded me of one of my own journeys on behalf of the church, a journey which took me to Athens a few years ago, when the Council of the World Communion of Reformed Churches in Europe met there, particularly in order to give support and encouragement to one of our member churches, the Greek Evangelical Church, a denomination of about 4,000 members in total, which nonetheless is at the very forefront of work in Greece with arriving refugees. I'm always excited about going new places. And before the meeting began, I took a walk and I walked up towards the Acropolis. Just below the main ceremonial gateway, there is a rocky outcrop, worn smooth and shiny by millions of feet. As some of you know, I can't resist clambering up a rock. And so, of course, I did so, along with many other people who were sitting there, walking there, talking, picnicking, courting, admiring the view. A sign indicated what this rocky outcrop was. It was called the Areopagus. And it has clearly been a place where people have gathered for thousands of years, where the people of Athens meet to chat and towards which visitors like me and like Paul have always been drawn. I like that sense of connection that some places can give you with people of long ago. That day I liked the sense that Paul had sat on that place nearly 2,000 years ago. And that chance visit, that find, as it were, for me, made this story, which Margaret read for us a few minutes ago, a bit more real to me. Especially since I got the sense that really things hadn't changed that much, that people were still gathering in that place, doing the same things that people had always done there. Even without that visit, this story has always been a bit of a favourite of mine. I like it because it gives us a different sense of Paul's character from the one that we maybe more often gain from reading his letters. Here we see Paul as an open-minded person, willing to discuss and debate different ideas, willing to engage with different ways of thinking. And it shows him engaging with the culture and the society he was in at that time, meeting people where they were, taking seriously their ways of thinking, even though he did not necessarily share them himself. And that's something, this taking seriously of the ideas of others, this meeting people where they are, is something that very often the church has not actually been that good at, to our cost. One can imagine that Paul had been wandering through the city of Athens and had been looking around him to see what he could see, like any visitor to a new city. Somewhere he spotted an altar with the inscription, "To an unknown God." Now, Paul was always looking for ways of introducing the gospel of Jesus Christ to new people. And in this altar, he saw an opportunity. Here were people, he realized, who were both intellectually curious enough and intellectually humble enough to recognize there were things that they didn't know. Again, I think this is something that the church has not been good at, preferring to pretend that it has all the answers when patently it doesn't. You have to kind of admire Paul's audacity. A stranger in a strange city, talking to people he'd never met before. He says this: "The God who is unknown to you is known to me." It's a good, attention-grabbing line. Surrounded by temples to other gods, where no doubt priests were doing their rituals, making their sacrifices, Paul spoke of a God who was everywhere, not just in a temple. A God who loved and served people, who wanted his people to serve him by serving other people, not by making sacrifices or performing rituals. A God who was actually more knowable than the gods the Greeks thought they already knew. But perhaps we should pause a moment there. Perhaps I am making an assumption that I really have no basis for making, assuming that the people of Athens thought that they knew the gods they worshipped. Some might say they couldn't have known them because they weren't real. But I would counsel that we should be careful about saying things like that, because many people would say the same about us and about our God. Rather, I feel that we should take a lead from Paul in respecting the religious traditions of others. But I think he detected something of an emptiness at the heart of the religious traditions that he encountered in Athens. He saw, and he says this, he saw how extremely religious the people were in every way. But the incredible variety of altars and shrines and idols and different gods indicated something unsettled. Their altar to an unknown God, rather than being an indication of broad-mindedness, was maybe an indication that there was a deep religious confusion. and a fear of offending some deity by not giving it an altar of its own. The people were certainly looking, but maybe they weren't finding. Whatever explanations we might come up with for this vast pantheon of gods, this range of deities that the people then worshipped, we can be certain of one thing. The Athenians were looking for meaning, and they were looking for it in religion. And I want to lay before us this morning this question. Is our society, albeit 2,000 or so years later, really so different? Is there any less of a search for meaning in life now than there was then? I would like to think, and I suspect that you will share this, to think that people are looking for meaning in religion. But I suspect we have to admit that most people are not doing that. But I do believe that people are looking for meaning in their lives. And perhaps we need to take seriously the idea that religion is not the only source of meaning. You can find meaning in family life, in creativity, in activities which test the mind and body, in caring for other people, in work. In fact, you can find meaning in all sorts of things in life. And all these things provide meaning to a greater or lesser extent. But arguably, none provides ultimate meaning. Paul asserted to the Athenians pretty strongly, you have to say, that ultimate meaning was found in Jesus Christ, the Son of the God whom he thought the Athenians did not know but were looking for. I hope that that is a belief which we would all share. And maybe what we need to take from this story of a conversation on a rocky outcrop in the middle of an ancient city, is that though many things are different now from how they were then, many things are not different. Just as people then were searching for meaning, so people are searching now. So maybe we need to be a wee bit more like St. Paul, broad-minded and willing to engage with the world, but at the same time bold enough to proclaim that the God we know, in whom we live and move and have our being, is the ultimate source of meaning and fulfillment in life. We need to be a wee bit more brave, a wee bit more ready to be a church which is a movement of people rather than an institution of property and procedures and regulations, and a bit more confident that the faith which animates our lives has the power to animate the lives of others too. Amen.